Well, I thought it was time to do another episode of A Critic's Journey. I'm Dave G, and I've been a film journalist now for over 20 years. And the idea of A Critic's Journey was to go back over films that I've watched during my career or watched during my life that I've either loved or loathed, and sometimes I'll go and check out a classic movie that I've never seen before, but I've always meant to watch, kind of thing. The film that I went back and had a look at this time was Starship Troopers. My Popcorn Conspiracy co-host, Kyle, wrote to me and said, hey, they're showing Starship Troopers at IMAX. And I have to say, it's not a movie that I've ever gone back to revisit again since I saw it when it first came back out in 1997. I remember it was my last year at high school, and this movie came out, and everybody wanted to go and see it. I remember going along and seeing it, and I kind of wasn't blown away with it. Like, there was movies coming out at that time that just absolutely blew me away and started me on my journey of being a filmmaker and of being a film lover as well. This wasn't one of them, but when Kyle said to me, hey, let's go check out Starship Troopers at IMAX, I was kind of like, yeah, you know what? I would actually like to go back and watch this film. Since then, I have read so much about this film and what it was meant to be that it was something that I was meaning to check out anyway. So I was like, well, I might as well go and check it out on a cinema screen that's 3 stories high. For anyone that hasn't been to IMAX here in Melbourne, it is one of the biggest screens in the world, and I don't think it's utilized enough for some of the media screenings that we do, because all we tend to see there mainly are the documentaries that IMAX show. And yeah, they're normally great documentaries, but it almost seems like a bit of a waste having this 3-story high screen and then not showing some of the blockbusters on it. Like like you can go and see them, IMAX screen them, but they don't very often have our big blockbuster media screenings at IMAX. So I was kind of keen to go and check out Starship Troopers on this big screen. Now, I'd done a lot of research into this film before I went to see it, and I found out that this movie was supposed to actually be an anti-war film. It was never supposed to be this kind of Red Dawn-like high school film with teenagers getting put into a war and having to win. It was supposed to be a film that kind of took a swipe at things like the Nazi Party and how that operated with the Hitler Youth. And I don't think that quite comes across in the movie. Like, I love Paul Verhoeven and I love the way he directs, but I read somewhere, and I can't say that this is entirely true, but it's what I read, was that Paul Verhoeven actually only read the first chapter of the book that this was based on, and then decided he didn't want to go any further. And a lot of people have said that's the reason why he missed the point, that this story was supposed to be anti-war. Because what you get with this film is you basically get young lovers, Johnny Rico, played by Casper Van Dien, and Carmen, played by Denise Richards, who decide that they're going to sign up and join the military because it's the only way to become a true citizen in where they live. Now, at the same time, you've also got this other character called Dizzy, played by Dina Meyer, and she wants to be with Johnny, but Johnny is completely in love with Carmen. And you see this moment where Johnny realizes that him and Carmen are going to be split up because he hasn't got the grades to become a pilot like she does. He's going to have to go in the infantry and make their way through. And he's got all these stars in his eyes, and he's dreaming about the fact that they're still going to be together. But of course, she nearly instantly runs into this guy that she already knows that's got the hots for her as well. So apparently Paul Verhoeven actually took some of that out because there was supposed to be more of the romance with her and the new guy once they're away, kind of thing. But there was talk that it would put a downer on her character, so they took some of those scenes out. The other character that's also here is Carl, played by Neil Patrick Harris, who can use telepathy and things like that to kind of get creatures to do what he needs them to do. So he goes off and joins this specialty unit as well. But why I say this film doesn't quite bring across its anti-war message is that you find yourself barracking for these characters when they're off at war against this alien species that has attacked Earth. It's really, really weird in that way. Like, you would think if you wanted to make an anti-war film, you wouldn't make it in such a way that you find yourselves cheering for the people that you're supposed to be having a swipe at. Sure, there's some obvious bits in there that show like what we saw of the dark side of what happened with the Nazi Party during World War II. There's one part in this movie, and I won't go into spoilers, but there's one part in this movie where a squadron of soldiers are sent to go out and help where Johnny is, and they're all kids. And that's an obvious nod to the Hitler Youth. Likewise, whenever you see Neil Patrick Harris's character Carl turn up at any other time during this movie, he is dressed in like an SS uniform. It's the trench coat and what you would expect to see somebody wearing if they were playing an SS soldier in any modern day movie. So yes, it does have that nods to Nazism, but because they make the alien creatures in this so repulsive and ugly that you don't actually mind that the humans are blowing them away. And then if you're going to make a movie where your point is that fascism and this kind of military presence is bad, then probably don't start the movie with those aliens attacking Earth, because of course Earth is going to fight back. And I know that the whole idea of this film is to kind of show that this kind of military is bad, but this film practically does the opposite, where it actually ends up making these kids look like heroes that are having to protect Earth, especially when you throw in that, and this is not too much of a spoiler because it happens pretty early on, especially when part of the reason why these kids are fighting is because their parents have just been killed. Doesn't make a lot of sense in that sense. Now, there are some pretty cheesy moments in this. I know that I was sitting there watching it, and only a few days later, I was at my parents' place and ended up watching a couple of episodes of Star Trek because that was on TV, and some of the scenes in it kind of reminded me of Star Trek. The early school scenes actually reminded me a lot of some of those like kind of teenage sex romp films that came out in the 80s and the 90s as well, where like all the kids are like, hey, are you coming to this party and stuff like that. So it does have a really kind of weird styling to it. The action sequences aren't too bad. I know a lot of people have kind of dumped on this film over the years and kind of said it's Paul Verhoeven's worst film and stuff like that. Some of the action sequences, they're not brilliant, but you don't sit there and kind of groan and think how bad they are. The story itself kind of works. It like you're lying if you're saying that you don't end up barracking for Johnny, and I reckon some people out there are even going to start finding themselves wishing that he gets with Carmen or he gets with Dizzy and kind of going through that bit. The character of Ace, that's played by Jake Busey, he is just such a joke. He reminds me of Stifler from American Pie, but he kind of stands out, and again, you kind of want to see him succeed. This is a really, really strange film in that element that it seems to almost jump genres at times and things like that. And it feels weird saying that a movie that doesn't really set out to do, that doesn't really do what it set out to do, works. But look, you just find it an enjoyable action film in the end. It's not one of those movies that I would say is one of my favorites, but I think it's definitely, now I've gone back and revisited it, it is definitely a cult favorite for me. It's one of those movies that since I went back and saw it at IMAX, I've been telling all of my friends, oh man, you should go back and give this film another go. It's not as bad as what you remember, kind of thing. It's got a couple of moments in there where for the eagle-eyed viewer as well, Rue McClanahan from The Golden Girls appears in there as a biology teacher, and you're kind of like, hey, yeah. Michael Ironside puts in a pretty good performance in this film as well. That was something else that stuck with me, but yeah, look, if you read about this movie and you go into it expecting a movie that's anti-war, you're not going to get that. It's just a kind of fun, almost action film. So don't expect heartfelt moments or anything like that. It's kind of light on for that kind of thing. But yeah, if you kind of like those teenage movies like Cruel Intentions and Wild Things, then kind of imagine those films set in the middle of an alien battle, and you kind of got some feeling of where Starship Troopers is. But look, go back, revisit it, see what you think now that you've gone back and had a look at it. If you're like me and you hadn't seen it since the 90s, certainly not going to crap on this film because I did enjoy it. So I'm going to give it 3 out of 5.